Last week on the show, we decided to branch out, start talking about music. Now, it was like music that was in movies, so somewhat related, but now we're branching out even more. We're talking about games.
Hooray, video games.
Welcome to our worst episode.
I guess just PlayStation exclusives in general.
Yeah, just PlayStation exclusives.
We're also joined by a friend of the show, longtime buddy of mine from college, just like everyone else here. His name's Christian. How's it going, man?
Hey everybody, how's it going?
For the record, Christian, what did you say you wanted your avatar to be again?
Can it actually be Diego from Go Diego Go?
Dora's cousin?
Yeah, Dora's cousin.
All right, yeah, it'll be Diego from Go Diego Go. You got it.
Can you put Baby Jaguar in there too?
Nobody else has a sidekick. We are all very excited for this episode, especially Josh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he's so excited.
For the first round, we've got God of War up against Bloodborne. Why is Bloodborne winning, Christian?
I feel like Bloodborne could go over God of War just because there's a lot of replayability with Bloodborne. God of War was very lacking in the side missions, whereas I just feel like with Bloodborne, since it's so open-ended, you could do a lot more with it. So honestly, I think Bloodborne goes with it.
Oh, I was being facetious. I think this is definitely a God of War pick.
Gonna go with Bloodborne on this one also. What Bloodborne is doing is a lot more experimental than what God of War is doing. The combat system is a lot better, in my opinion, than God of War's sort of... It's not exactly an aping of the Dark Souls Bloodborne style, but it's kind of like a hodgepodge of like that melee combat with like some RPG elements. But Bloodborne is also important for the PS4 because, in my opinion, it was the first PS4 exclusive that made buying a PS4 worth it. It came out in 2015, 2 years after the console came out, and before that, the most notable exclusive was probably like Infamous Second Son.
I could agree with that. That's actually very valid.
Well, what I really like about God of War, specifically this most recent one, is how they kind of elevated as a franchise. Like, they made 3 games that were essentially just, like, glorified beat-em-ups. There wasn't much to it. Like, they tried to have a story, but it was really cheesy and over the top. And then the most recent one, I don't like as much as those cheesy beat-em-up games, but it focused a lot more on the narrative and did win a lot of people over. I think what you're saying, though, about the replayability is valid, but I think that we're going to run into a lot of games on this list that don't have a lot of like replay value outside of their main story mode. Alden, Josh, what are your guys' takes here?
I'm on the side of God of War.
Sounds like you're the tiebreaker.
I played God of War for a little bit. Thought it was cool. Yeah, I guess I'll go with God of War.
Dipped his toes in just for a second.
Just for a little bit.
He heard him say boy, and he was like, all right, I understand the meme.
He said, honestly, I understand the complexities of the word boy now.
Boy.
So that sounds like God of War's moving on, despite Bloodborne maybe having the better argument. The 3 normies voted for God of War.
That's perfectly fine.
So up next, we got Final Fantasy VII versus Nier Automata. Is that how you pronounce that?
It's Automata.
Yeah, Automata.
Sorry, I don't watch anime.
Alden, what's your pick?
Nier Automata.
Yeah, I'm with Alden on that.
I'm also going with Nier Automata.
I'm also going with Nier Automata.
Good thing we have no respect for Cloud Strife here.
Final Fantasy VII is good for what it is, but when you compare both games side by side, Nier Automata, you get a complete game, whereas Final Fantasy VII, you're still waiting on the second half. For a casual consumer, I think with like even the remake, I know some people that like have never even touched a Final Fantasy game at all, and they've played the remake and they just love it, and they can't wait for the second release.
To me, the biggest thing about Nier Automata isn't even the gameplay, but the story and the world of Nier, where it's like the androids and the machines waging war against each other for aliens and humans that have been dead for like millennia at this point. And then you go into the whole thing where it has all the separate playthroughs that change, like, and recontextualize the original story. It's just very interesting to me, and I would take it over Final Fantasy VII in a heartbeat.
Okay, so hear me out. Shadow of Colossus versus Journey. Where do we stand?
I stand on Shadow of the Colossus all the way. I think both are fantastic games, and both are on the more artistic side of the spectrum, and I think that there should be more games like both of these. However, I think Shadow of the Colossus delivers on gameplay a lot more than Journey manages to.
I literally couldn't agree more. Shadow of the Colossus, you got to interact in that lesson. Because I mean, from what I also haven't played these games. I played Journey, but I haven't played Shadow of the Colossus. It's been on my list. In these combat sequences, there's just this big music, and it's so epic, and there's all this stuff that you're doing, and you don't really know what you're doing it for. And then, like, when you're riding off into the sunset on your horse, it's just completely quiet.
Loved the original version of Shadow of Colossus. I played it a lot on my PlayStation 2. Journey was one of those games that I'm not really like a super big gamer, but when it was getting all the hype and the press that it was, I was like, oh, that's a game I've got to try out. I made my brother buy it for his PlayStation and played Journey pretty much entirely in like one sitting. It's a very good game to do that, and I understand why it got the praise that it did, but you were talking earlier about the replayability being an important factor for games. Once you understand the aesthetics and the story of Journey, there's nothing else really to it. And Shadow of Colossus, at the very least, at least more like epic moments that if you were to play through the story again, you'd be able to kind of relive some things. The remake decided to deviate a little bit, but have the same core gameplay and art style. I think so. I have to go with Shadow of Colossus as well. I think this is a category people have played games. Marvel Spider-Man versus Infamous.
Hey, Josh, you can weigh in on one round.
Go ahead, Josh. You go ahead.
No, somebody else go ahead.
All right, I'll step up. I believe that the Infamous franchise is better than Spider-Man, but in terms of the PS4 exclusives, I think Spider-Man is better than Second Son. For franchise, it's definitely Infamous. I think as a whole, it does a lot more than just a Spider-Man game. And that's saying a lot because Spider-Man was really good.
I would agree.
Yeah, I'm casting my vote for Marvel's Spider-Man.
Yeah, I'm still Infamous.
If we're going for a franchise, I'm going Infamous.
I am still going Spider-Man either way.
Yeah, I'm going Spider-Man.
All right, the normies take it again.
Godspeed, Spider-Man.
Crash Bandicoot up against Ratchet and Clank.
Ooh.
You made this bracket, and I said, you're a motherfucker because you knew that this part would fuck me up.
To me, it's a no-brainer. If you prefer Ratchet and Clank over Crash Bandicoot, you're a numbskull, and I'm going to say that again.
I guess I'm a numbskull. I'm sorry, Nate.
I guess I'm a numbskull.
You guys are knuckle-scraping idiots if you choose Ratchet and Clank over Crash Bandicoot.
That's okay.
I'm pretty sure we've got 3-2.
I don't fucking care.
Some of y'all are Crash Bandicoot kids, and it shows. I'm voting Ratchet and Clank.
I'm voting Ratchet and Clank.
I'm also voting Ratchet and Clank.
Wow. Man, I wish I had a veto.
Speaking of the fourth console generation up against the fifth console generation again, we've got Spyro the Dragon versus Sly Cooper. I'm 100% on Team Spyro the Dragon here. Please don't hurt me.
I'm going with Nate. I'm on Team Spyro on this one.
I'm also on Team Spyro.
Lost cause, but I think Sly Cooper is a better franchise.
I was just gonna help Alden out and also vote Sly Cooper. All my friends that played Spyro got bullied in middle school.
So I was kind of always underwhelmed with Spyro.
I can kind of see the defense.
No, I could too, because Sucker Punch is a fantastic studio, and Sly Cooper is definitely not a series to scoff at. But when it comes to being better than Spyro the Dragon, no. Spyro 3, masterpiece, chef kiss. Can't say much more. There's nothing better you can say about that game.
I think Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon escalates even more than Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, and I think it's probably the best PlayStation 1 game.
Alden, what is my defense?
I normally hate stealth. It's so boring. It's so slow. But their stealth didn't have to be perfectly stealth. If you got caught, there was a good chance you could get away. Even in the harder parts, it wasn't too difficult. And as a kid, that means a lot.
Oh, what I really like about Spyro, though, is it's a very easy game, but it rewards you for exploring the environments, which is something that the remake can't do justice because we live in like the modern console generation. So it's like these worlds and all the levels feel really small. But as a kid, when you're looking for, all the eggs and it's a collectathon and you like have to move behind this one rock and smash a wall and there you go, you finally found the last egg of that level. Like, it definitely rewards you for exploring and getting every little drop of the game. And that's something that I feel isn't the same with Sly Cooper. I feel like its missions are fairly linear. And if you go about it in a different way, then you're not necessarily rewarded for it like you are in Spyro.
But anyway, that sounds like Spyro. 3-2.
3-2. Well, it was another close one. We're moving on. Parappa the Rapper up against Ape Escape. Jory, why is Ape Escape moving on?
Ape Escape is moving on because Ape Escape has Metal Gear Solid Easter eggs and appeared in the PS2 release of Metal Gear Solid 3.
Oh, that's why?
All right, Ape Escape's just a lot of fun.
Ape Escape, bro. Who could say no to fucking brainwashed monkeys?
You guys want to hear a really funny Ape Escape story?
I would love to hear a really funny Ape Escape story. Did your apes escape?
Was Escape the Planet of the Apes not the time travel? Yeah, the time travel one.
All right, up next, we've got Dreams versus Little Big Planet.
I barely know what Dreams is.
That's why Little Big Planet wins.
All right, it's fighting game time. We've moved on to the other half of the bracket. We've got Street Fighter versus Tekken, specifically Street Fighter V versus Tekken 2, but they're representative of their whole franchises that are PlayStation exclusive.
Sort of.
Whoa, it's Tekken.
No, it's not Tekken. These are representative of their entire franchises, and Street Fighter 2 exists.
All I'm going to say is that you were either a Street Fighter kid or you were a Tekken kid. And it sounds like we've got a Street Fighter kid.
I was a Mortal Kombat kid.
Yeah, I was also a Mortal Kombat kid.
Tekken, you're like half the cast is like a giant ass bear or like some random ass thing and don't really explain the lore. But with Street Fighter, it's like, oh, it's a giant global fighting tournament, and these people all represent different parts of the country or world or whatever. And it's a fun little gimmick. It's not overbearing. It's kind of anime-y to me. It's kind of weeb.
Yeah, even if you like Tekken more than Street Fighter, I think that you're going to have a very, very, very hard time saying that Heihachi is more iconic than Ryu.
All right, I guess I will yield my argument.
Anyway, we've got The Last Guardian up against Horizon Zero Dawn. Has anyone played either of these games?
I've played Horizon, but I've never played The Last Guardian.
I haven't played either, but I'm going to go with Horizon Zero Dawn.
All right, Horizon Zero Dawn it is. Up next, we've got Detroit Become Human up against The Order 1886.
Detroit Become Human.
I'm also with Detroit Become Human.
Yeah, it's the MLB The Show versus PlayStation All-Stars. It's time for your round, Josh.
Tell us why MLB probably might or maybe not move on.
This generation of consoles, the PS4 and Xbox One, have been such a huge bro moment for sports games, except for MLB The Show. That's been the only sports series this generation that has actually gone better over the years, where each new game is bringing something different, and it's done revolutionary things for that genre, where you could start a season mode, play through it, and then you can continue it on the next game. No other sports game does that. I think MLB The Show is definitely by far the best sports series on this franchise, and sorry, Xbox One users, you're missing out.
All right, Alden, now tell us why PlayStation All-Stars is better than Smash Ultimate. All right, sounds like MLB The Show moves on.
Alden, it's your turn. We're talking cars here. We've got Gran Turismo versus Twisted Metal.
Gran Turismo is all right.
Holy shit, I played both of these games. Oh my god. Motorstorm was my first PS3 game.
Same. It came with mine.
I think Gran Turismo is just a boneless Forza.
It is.
And I think Twisted Metal is a really, really, really fun driving game. It's pretty much if you mixed Mortal Kombat with Mario Kart, and that's exactly what I wanted it to be. So Twisted Metal's dope.
I would much rather play Twisted Metal than Gran Turismo.
I'm going Twisted Metal.
Sweet. Twisted Metal's going on. We've got Metal Gear Solid 3 up against Death Stranding.
It's Metal Gear Solid 3.
It's Metal Gear Solid 3.
Yeah.
Specifically in the Metal Gear franchise, which is actually surprisingly old. This might be a hot take, but I think Metal Gear Solid 3 is the best game out of all of them. To put it up against something like Death Stranding is a no contest in my opinion. All right, guys. This is the big one. It's the one that we're going to get more dislikes for than any other video. We've got The Last of Us versus Uncharted.
I went with Uncharted instead of The Last of Us.
So I guess everybody is actually on our side here.
Yeah, if you really thought that I chose The Last of Us over Uncharted, you're a fucking moron.
You got like 5 games versus 1.
You really think I'm going to choose 4 to 5 great games over one pretty okay game? Especially with how Neil Druckmann has been fucking driving Naughty Dog into the ground?
I don't know. I'm really excited for The Last of Us 2. They've had some gameplay leaks, guys. I'm real excited.
Nate, shut up.
Guys, Ellie's in a boat.
All right, we've got the Weeb round. We've got Persona 5 versus Tales of Berseria. Why is Tales of Berseria moving on, Jory?
Persona 5 is moving on because it's probably one of the best games on this list. Get out of here. It's going to be any argument for Tales of Berseria, if any of us have even played it.
I'm pretty sure Ape Escape is better than Persona 5.
I think it's really sad that The Last of Us and Tales of Berseria have to be on the same category because they're both getting eliminated in the first round. Persona 5 is arguably a modern masterpiece. Even if you don't appreciate the game, you can at least appreciate its art style or its music.
Can I?
Yeah, Josh, you really should.
I mean, dude, I haven't even played the game, and there's songs on that soundtrack that I have saved on Spotify. God of War versus Nier Automata. Automata? Onomatopoeia? 3, 2, 1.
God of War.
Bloodborne. Oh wait, I forgot. God of War.
God of War it is.
God of War.
All right, we've got Shadow of Colossus up against Marvel's Spider-Man. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Shadow of the Colossus.
Shadow of Colossus.
I was gonna go with Spider-Man, but you go for it.
I was gonna go with Spider-Man as a joke.
So that's Shadow of the Colossus moving on, right?
All right, guys, we got Ratchet and Clank versus Spyro the Dragon here. Ready? Spyro.
Spyro.
Ratchet and Clank.
That's 3 Spyro.
So long, Ratchet and Clank.
They were king.
Ape Escape, which is apparently better than Persona 5, according to Alden, up against Little Big Planet. 3, 2, 1. Little Big
Little Big
Planet.
Planet.
Ape Escape.
Little Big Planet is so much better.
Little Big Planet does a lot more, and it allows gamers to be creative, which they typically aren't. So we've got Street Fighter V up against Horizon Zero Dawn. 3, 2, 1. Street Fighter V.
Street Fighter
Horizon.
5.
Zero Dawn.
Street Fighter.
Totally with Horizon, but with Street Fighter, go for it.
Detroit Become Human up against MLB The Show. Ready? MLB The Show.
Detroit.
MLB the show.
MLB.
We did it! The Detroit Tigers are moving on.
The Detroit Become Tigers are moving on.
Well, up next, we've got Twisted Metal versus Metal Gear Solid 3, the metal round. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Metal Gear Solid 3.
Twisted Metal.
Metal Gear Solid.
Okay, then it's Metal Gear Solid.
Thank God.
I think this is the first actual debate here. We've got Uncharted versus Persona 5. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Persona
5.
Uncharted.
Persona 5.
Holy shit. Thank you, Josh. Here's the most simple argument I can make for this. Is Nathan Drake in Smash Bros? Answer me that yes or no question, Alden.
No.
All right. Then Uncharted is getting left behind.
I've actually never played a Persona game in my life, but I've played almost every single Uncharted, and I still put Persona above Uncharted.
Wow.
Okay, well, we've got God of War up against Shadow of Colossus. We're in the Elite Eight, and we're building the Final Four here. So everything's important. We're debating these, boys and girls. I'm gonna just draw a line in the sand now and say I'm with Team Shadow of the Colossus.
I'm on Nate's side here.
I'm with God of War.
I'm with God of War.
Shadow of the Colossus is how old at this point?
The original came out in 2003, I think.
Even with this brand new remaster that is basically the old game with a new coat of paint, I think it's going to age far more gracefully than God of War will, and it already has. I think that there's a lot more to be said for Shadow of the Colossus than there is for God of War. God of War is still a fantastic game, and I love the story, but gameplay-wise, I think it's left a lot to be desired.
I feel like with God of War and with Shadow of the Colossus, with the story intention, it's like it was a new setting, it was a new family, it was new ties. I knew I was connected with it. And so like I was much more involved with the story because of the entire franchise of itself. Whereas with Shadow of the Colossus, it kind of like dropped me in it, and it was just kind of like, oh, I guess I'm just doing this now. Combat wise, it was just like it brought in a new element, it breathed new fresh air into a series that was kind of getting a little bit repetitive because of a linear story. Because it still felt linear, but it still kept the God of War feel. And I still feel like the story was still pretty impactful as well because of the character development throughout the entire story.
The reason that I am sticking with Shadow of Colossus here is because it was a game that I grew up playing, and I eventually played the God of War games as well. And the original ones on the PlayStation 2 were more fun to me than where the games got down the line. And I think that it's just gameplay preference, and if you're someone who prefers the more story-driven game, then I think God of War is for you. But for me, I think it's all about the tone and the I guess the world that the Shadow of Colossus builds. And for me, Shadow of the Colossus was like what I thought Legend of Zelda always should have been, and it never got there. And it was just this hidden gem on the PlayStation 2 that I remember playing and talking to my friends about, and they were all already playing Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 games, and I was like, no, guys, you got to check this game out.
I think the franchise of God of War just kind of, it's bigger, clearly. And I think even aging people are going to come back to God of War just as much as they would Shadow of the Colossus, but now there's 4 games for God of War and currently just 1 for Shadow.
There are 2 or maybe 3 other God of War games besides God of War 1, 2, and 3 and the new God of War that nobody has mentioned. And I don't think that helps your point that these are games that people are going to come back to.
Josh, based on the arguments you've heard, which game would you be interested in moving on?
Shadow of Colossus.
Up next, we've got Spyro the Dragon up against Little Big Planet.
Spyro, easy.
Little Big Planet, easy.
I'm going to go with Spyro on this one.
I'm going with my gut here and sticking with Spyro. Street Fighter V versus MLB The Show.
I'm going with Street Fighter 5.
How many good Street Fighter games are there, Jory?
Like 4 or 5 at least.
MLB The Show definitely has more than 4 good games.
Yeah, but does it have any games as revolutionary as Street Fighter 2, 2 Turbo, or 3?
No.
This game has revolutionized this generation when it comes to sports gaming.
I'm sorry, Josh.
I'm sorry, Josh. Let's not listen to Josh. Got it. Sports ball.
I would still much rather play Mario Super Sluggers than I would the MLB The Show.
I think MLB The Show's legacy is very notable for being the only good sports game for a whole generation that's probably going to continue to be good.
Got Metal Gear Solid 3 up against Persona 5.
Well, both of these characters are in Smash.
I'm going with MGS3. I haven't played any either of them, but I mean, I guess I'm much more with the real-time combat just because it's like I'm really not a big fan of turn-based combat.
I can think of tons of other JRPGs that are almost as good as Persona, but in terms of stealth combat games, I really can't think of one that even comes close to competing with Metal Gear Solid.
If we're talking about them being, one is real time versus one is turn-based, I think that the gameplay of Persona 5 is a lot faster paced than Metal Gear Solid 3, at least if you're not using any like speedrunning tricks or anything that you've garnered from like multiple playthroughs or anything like that. And I would argue that I think Persona 5 is an easier game to just jump into for a little bit than Metal Gear Solid 3 is, because the gameplay pace is fairly slow. You have to plan out your whole like method of attack, decide like what you're going to do, manage all of your resources, things like that. But there's just so much creativity that goes into what you want to do with Metal Gear Solid 3. You know what? I'm going to vote for Persona 5. If you guys vote Metal Gear Solid 3 over that, that's fine.
How many of the other Persona games have you played, or was 5 your first?
5 was my first.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking here, is because, like, although I think Metal Gear Solid 3 is the best of its franchise, I think there's also, like, 4 other fantastic games in that franchise. And I think that speaks volumes to how well made of a game that Persona 5 is in comparison to Metal Gear Solid 3 just being another fantastic entry that may or may not even be a standout in its franchise. I don't know. I'm on Persona 5.
Josh, you're the tiebreaker.
Based on the arguments, because I haven't played this either one of these games personally, Persona 5.
The final 4, the 4 most impactful and lasting PlayStation exclusive games are Shadow of the Colossus, Spyro the Dragon, Street Fighter 5, and Persona 5.
Imagine me getting Persona 5 in the final 4, but Jory couldn't just vote for MLB The Show.
Josh, I'm sorry. I didn't know it meant that much to you.
I'm glad Spider-Man Homecoming's number 12 on our fucking Marvel list.
Because Street Fighter 5 was a 3-2, can we do an unprecedented take back? Where I change my vote to MLB The Show?
I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference.
Me neither, but I'm still going to do it.
For the entire left side of the bracket, we've got Shadow of the Colossus up against Spyro the Dragon.
Yeah, this is really hard for me.
This is tough. These are 2 of my favorite games as a child.
I'm still going to go Shadow of the Colossus all the way.
Bully anybody who says Spyro.
Well, I was already saying Shadow.
I'm going to go with Spyro the Dragon here. But I think Spyro always had the best gameplay, especially with its sequels, has very diverse level and character design, where you have side quests where you're playing as different characters that isn't just Spyro the Dragon. Whereas Shadow of Colossus, my biggest knock against it, and it's, like I said, it's in my top 10 favorite video games of all time, is the gameplay's a little on the repetitive side, although I really enjoy it. By the time you get to the 11th or 12th Colossi, you're kind of just like, okay.
I think that Shadow of the Colossus has a very strong pattern. I think that the biggest thing that detracts from it is not all of the Colossi are winners, but altogether as a whole, I still think Shadow of the Colossus is a better solid package as one game than Spyro.
If we're talking about music, you were saying earlier that you think Shadow of the Colossus has some of the best music out of this whole bracket. I would agree, but I'd also say that we're sleeping on Spyro the Dragon's music. I think there's a lot of really, really great songs throughout the original trilogy. The mix between synth and orchestral instruments is really interesting, and I'm glad they, for the most part, left it untouched in the Reignited trilogy.
I watched the movie Blow today on Netflix. It was pretty good Johnny Depp movie.
And you're gonna go with Spyro because Spyro blows fire?
No, I'm still going with Shadow of Colossus. Am I gonna puke? No, I'm good.
Sounds like Shadow of the Colossus is moving on. And then for the right side of the bracket, we've got Street Fighter V versus Persona 5.
No, we have MLB The Show versus Persona 5.
Okay, Persona 5 then.
Josh, I have a question for you regarding MLB The Show.
Yeah.
Do you feel with every entry the games get progressively better, or do you think it's just the one that hasn't gotten worse as this console generation has worn on?
I've noticed an advancement in something for every game when it comes to MLB The Show, and I can't say the same for Madden or NBA 2K or NHL or any of the other sports games.
I really just don't think that it's really a competition, because Persona 5 is the standout game of its franchise by a landslide. I mean, it was the first of that franchise to really break through this big in the West. This hype cycle for Persona 5 consistently since that game came out, and I think it's the Street Fighter 2 of its franchise. I really do.
MLB The Show made me care about baseball, and Persona 5 will not make me care about anime.
Josh, what if I tell you that there is a batting cage in Persona 5?
No, because I could just play MLB The Show.
Christian, are you on MLB The Show or Persona 5?
Definitely Persona 5.
All right, we got Shadow of the Colossus up against Persona 5 here, guys.
Shadow of the Colossus, and that's my only response.
Shadow of the Colossus.
My mom says Shadow of the Colossus sounds better.
It is. It is better.
Artistically, yeah.
Persona 5.
Actually, I'll put Josh on this one.
Josh, why is Persona 5, a game you haven't played, better than Shadow of the Colossus, a game you haven't played?
I'm going to be completely fucking honest right now. What the fuck is Shadow of the Colossus?
Game where you play as like a kid with a sword, and you got to ride around this wasteland and find these giants and kill them to resurrect.
I'm already bored. Persona 5 I'm voting for.
Josh, can you explain to me what you think Persona 5 is about?
I don't know, some weeb shit.
Okay, it's a 3-2. I mean, what more can we really say? I feel like they're games you really can't compare.
Yeah, they're very different.
But I do think the immersion in Shadow of the Colossus is greater than Persona 5, even if you're playing the original version of Shadow of the Colossus. You get sucked into the world through its aesthetics, through its music, through the atmosphere, seeing these giant colossi off in the distance through all this haze, and realizing each one of them you mount is a different puzzle. It's a different beast to conquer. It to me, I can't really think of a game that really sucked me in more than the first time I played Shadow of the Colossus. Whereas Persona, it kind of has like a cult following that has escalated and grown significantly over time. And I am eager to try it out, but I really don't think it's going to like blow my expectations out of the water after 2.5 years of people overhyping it.
We shall see.
We shall see.
But anyways, yeah.
Next time I get a PlayStation 4, I'll play it.
He could have taken mine last time he was in Scranton. I got fucking 2 of them.
Well, Christian, all in all, how do you feel being a guest on our show?
He's your funniest friend.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 funniest friend out of all of them, out of all the funnies.
You were so funny.
You built a whole bracket. How did it shape up against the one that we built as a team?
Nowhere near the slightest, but
What did you have as your winner on that bracket?
I had Infamous. but I realize that other people have different perspectives and different opinions.
All right. Well, I think everyone's had a good night, and thank you everyone for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe.
Motherfuckers better know.